Hey, Neil. Okay. So we have enough. With me is Neil.
What's
We don't
that?
get anybody else, then we have to have you to come in here and sit down. Be co-chair.
I don't know about that. That's not my gig.
You're doing all right.
Yeah. Looks like Emily's getting on.
And look at here. Hello there. And you're on mute.
Emily, say something so I can get the level right.
Say something so he can get the level right. Unmute. Is she frozen? No, her eyes are blinking. Hello, Emily. Unmute. Okay.
I don't know.
Can you hear me now? Cannot hear me. Hello, Rick. Rick can't hear me. Hello,
I
Rick.
got you.
You got me. What about you,
Can
Emily?
you hear me?
Yeah, we're
I
trying to get the volume right. Say something.
We're good.
We're
We're good,
good.
on our end.
All right.
Emily might be having trouble with the volume on her computer.
Okay.
Let me try to go text her.
She is so shy and reserved.
Say Emily is shy. There's no shy. Emily, you're on mute
I am, but not anymore.
anymore. Hello.
He's back.
Dun, dun, dun. Hey, I am trying to figure out how to get these hooked to the computer, which is what is not going well.
Okay, we have. Plenty of time, plenty of time.
Either that or you just get my background noise when I talk, which there are worse things. I live with my background noise.
And Morris is coming in.
Woohoo.
Yeah. And she's on mute, so now we're.
Hello.
Hello, how are you?
Good. How are you all?
Doing well, doing well. Now we can't see you. And now we can see you. All right, that's better. Okay, wonderful.
I'm trying to control 2 Zooms at one time, and I've got to, hopefully it'll work, because they got another Zoom going on that I told them I can't be on, but I'm the one in control of the Zoom.
Oh, okay, well, yeah, you have to do double duty here. Okay. Okay, no, 10. Rick, that's 11 and 12, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
At
What
least that's what
chapter are
I'm,
we on?
11 and
11?
12.
11 and 12.
Oh man, I am way behind.
11, okay. Oh, now we go, got it, all right. I don't know whether Dean is coming on, but he was sick this week. He got the flu, COVID again.
Oh, no.
Yeah, he went in for a procedure and it ended up being extremely weak, finding out that he had the COVID also. And Orlando, Dr. McCauley has a class tonight, so he's not there. It won't be with us. And we're coming to that hour of 6:30. I don't see anybody. Oh, see, Jackie is coming in. We wait on Jackie.
I'm just trying to get this other group in so they can do what they need to do.
Okay. Well, we
You
have
do
some
what
others
you need to
coming
do.
in.
We understand.
Okay.
We're glad we get your attention.
The Hunter is on the way in, and somebody else. Who is that other person?
That would be his mom's phone.
That's his mom. Okay.
So that'd be Reagan.
Reagan, hello.
Hey,
Long
how are
time no
you?
see for some of us.
Yeah, it's been since last night, so.
I mean, well, I know a lot of more of us saw Pastor Jackie than she saw of us, but yes, we were there.
Connecting to audio.
You were there?
Oh yeah. There was a whole. I was there. I saw Jorge down in the front section. Jorge
Yeah, they
Leone.
were all my guests. Jorge and a
Yes.
couple of other Hispanics.
Bishop Yost was sitting down by some folks. Billy from Ascension.
Yeah, all my folks I knew were there.
Oh, yeah.
It's people outside of Ascension that I didn't know were
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
I ended up sitting with Michael Price in kind of the Living Springs section.
Oh, very good.
All
So
right.
Rev, you was there too? Rev, you come?
Hello. How are you?
Hello.
All right. I wanted to be there, but my book study is on Mondays at Reformation.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, so
And-
Okay, well I think you was Pastor Yost's guest, so.
Yeah,
he was the one
okay.
who-
All right.
Leroy let me know that. I knew that last night.
Yeah.
Okay.
I got photo evidence that you were there, Herman. Yeah, go for it.
We'll be dealing with 11 and 12 tonight, April 9th, the 13th, and the 15th. Do we have any volunteers for the leadership for that?
Jackie volunteered for.
I've been sending
Oh,
emails
that's
on it.
Jackie.
You
Okay.
did. I saw it.
Huh?
It was real.
All right. So that carries us to April 23rd, the 16th, and the 17th. Any volunteers?
I'll be glad to.
And we have Herman. Okay, so we got those 2 dates ready to go. So then we'll hear from you what we'll be doing after that, Emily.
Go lay down.
Okay.
Lay down,
Welcome to the South Carolina Synod's Inclusive Network Book Study. And we gather cross-culturally.
I hate to do this. I have to exit out and I'll come back. Y'all just keep going. I just got to get this other group in.
Get them in and
All
hurry.
right. I'll be right back.
All right. And of course, we have a variety of subjects and topics, and then we plan events, and then we do the book study. Definitely want to know what we're doing with the origin film. So anybody has that film, know how to get the film, and then we can start planning that date. Okay, I'll get with Emily and we'll try to start finding how to get it and when we can play it. Okay, Rick Mason is our leader for tonight. Anything from Emily before we get into that? Emily, any other updates?
Just a reminder that we have April 9th and April 23rd scheduled. And there is a doodle poll for your availability for June and July. May will be studying stewardship with Dr. Mark Allen Powell on Tuesday evenings as a synod. So some of you have filled out the poll. That is awesome and fantastic and very helpful. And some of you, I will send the link again. Because, and I know that summer is crazy and we're just going to do the best we can.
Okay, send us that link again and see whether or not some of us can join in that. And then, of course, the only thing that we will be working on would that be that film that we can have in cooperation with that. Okay, Rick, you're on.
Yes. Well, a quick review of where we've come from. Chapter 10, Justyce is struggling over his relationship with SJ, his white debate partner to whom he's attracted, when his black friend Manny insists they go to a birthday party of one of his white friends, Blake. And as soon as Manny and Just get to the party, Blake comes up and says, "Yo, listen, there's a fine-ass black girl here from Decatur Prep, and I was thinking you guys could wingman it up for me. I think if she meets my niggas, I'll have a good chance of getting her upstairs." Well, that did not go over well with Justyce at all. And fists end up flying, and ultimately Justyce refuses a ride back to campus from Manny as he walks all the way back himself. Then in his letter to Dr. King, he laments yet another news piece about a black man who got gunned down, and he's reminded that, quote, "people look at me and see me as a threat instead of as a human being." And he writes that he knows he was wrong getting into the fight at the party, then recalls hearing a girl ask as he was on his way out, "Why are black people so angry all the time?" Then he writes, "How am I supposed to feel?" And that's when we get to chapter 11, where Justyce is lying half under, and I think half naked, under his desk, hung over.
He was just summarizing chapter.
Pardon? Chapter 11?
Is that chapter?
Yeah, he's getting ready to go into chapter.
Yeah, I was summarizing chapter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's still
Yeah. He
summarizing.
was just summarizing 10. Now he's got into 11.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's getting ready to go into 11. In
Yeah,
number
now-
10,
Yeah,
why
now Justyce is,
I'm asking the question in number 10, why are they so upset?
yeah,
The question to us, why would he be so upset in chapter 10?
oh. Well,
Who?
Justyce feels like, well, he was, seriously, anything, these white friends just keep disregarding the black people in their group. And especially he's upset because this white kid wants to take advantage of a black girl who's going to be at the party and wants them to help him.
If I may add to it, Pastor Rick, not to mention when he got there, there's all these black
Yeah.
faces and all this other stuff in the yard
Right.
and on the wall and in the, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And not to
Whole lot
mention
of stuff.
that these same white guys call their black friends, "You are our niggers.
Yeah.
You are our niggers."
Yeah.
No,
Uh-huh.
they
We figure when she meets our niggers, she's gonna want to do whatever I want her to do.
Okay.
So there's an
You
implied
said it wrong. You said it wrong, Pastor Yosef. Niggas.
nigga. Excuse me. Nigga. Thank you.
There's a
We're going to
difference.
add that to things you didn't expect to hear in Bible study tonight, in book study tonight.
And that was one of the points, calling the words niggers.
Yeah.
And then using the black girls.
Right.
And then asking the question, why are you so angry? Why shouldn't we be angry as black men and black boys
And black women.
and
Yeah,
black
and
women?
and further background as we get into chapter 11 is that his black friend Manny doesn't stand up for him. but does try to give him a ride back to campus, which he refuses because he's pretty pissed off at Manny for not backing him.
Mhm.
So the next morning,
What
Justice
other,
again.
what other little detail you didn't mention? Just
What's
just
that?
is he was drinking heavily, so he was
Right.
he was pretty high when he got there,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
means
He
that,
and
that lowers your sense of should I say something or not say something, because you know you don't have as much social control generally when you've had a lot of alcohol.
right. Yeah.
And then he's walking in a white neighborhood, inebriated, and leaving
Not
a
a good, not a good
not
place
a
to
good,
be.
good place to be.
Not a good idea, which would have been made it a very good idea to get in the car with Manny, even though he was mad at him.
That begs the question then, why is he mad with his other black friend?
Because he didn't stand up for justice.
Cause he was a sellout. He was a
just
sellout to the black race. Bottom line, that's what Manny was representing to poor justice.
Right.
Okay,
The white guys are Manny's friends, childhood, lifetime friends. And Manny can't
Right.
help it that he's trying to reason with his friends. Though they're white and they're offensive, he still was, trying to remain in friendship with them, suppose. That's the way I saw it.
and therefore we have mixed feelings about Manny because of the fact
Right.
that he grew up under those circumstances with those friends.
That's right.
And so he really didn't feel the sense of wrongness as Justice did.
He just didn't see it. Right.
Right. Okay.
So then we get into chapter 11, and the next morning, Justice is awakened by knocking on his door, bangs his head because he finds out he's asleep on the floor underneath his desk, and bangs his head on the bottom of the desk. And then realizes he's half naked. And it's his societal evolution teacher, Doc Dre, has come to check on him. And at this point, Justice feels like very few people are willing or able to support him. But he finds out quickly that that's not the case. As Doc comes in and tells him he's there because Manny had called Doc Dre because he was worried about Justice. And he wanted Doc to check and see if he was all right. Because Manny had tried to call him several times and Justice wasn't answering because he was passed out. He still hung over the next morning. Doc's presence, though, doesn't necessarily change anything that's happened, but it's worth noting that Justice isn't completely on his own. Though he feels like he really is, because Doc is a lot older and he's half white, has his PhD, and he's one of his teachers. Well, as they're talking, Justice tells Doc about his father, who died when Justice was 11. Told him he had PTSD from being in the military, was an alcoholic, and used to get drunk and beat up Justice's mother. And he said one day he got caught a glimpse of my dad's eyes, and he saw that there was nothing in them. I think something like that happened last night, Justice says, that Justice was reflecting and thinking that had happened to him, that he had lost it. He tells Doc that he doesn't want to be like his father. Still, though, he can't help but get angry when he thinks about Manny letting their white friends say those racist things to them. And then Doc tells him a story about being raised in a similar situation to Manny's. But one day he had a rude awakening that the white folks saw him as black and the black kids expected him to know all the cultural references and slang. That he had grown up in a mostly white, nice school. And he didn't, the black kids wanted him to act black and the white kids wanted him to act black. It was torn apart.
Yeah, he's confused.
Yes, he was very confused. And as he thinks, he's trying, I think he's trying to tell just Manny is very confused.
Mhm.
He's got all these pressures
Right.
pulling on him in all
That's right.
directions. And then Doc tells Justice that he's only going to thrive if he's at peace with himself, which I think is something we're hearing over and over again in advice to Justice. He says, people are going to disrespect you, but so what? And he insists that people like Jared have no bearing on whether or not Justice is going to be successful. He says, if you know the stuff they're saying isn't true, why let it bother you? What do you think of that?
That's where you go back to that
Statement.
sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt. But words really, it really cuts. It cuts thick. And you have to mature to a level where you won't allow certain comments to bother you. For a teenager, it's almost impossible.
Yeah.
I agree. Peers are so important during those teenage years
Yes,
that they will influence you even if you don't want them to.
that's right.
And
That's
what-
exactly
that's
right.
what's happening with Manny is these peers of these white guys who are abusing their place in society with him. He'd been overlooking it for so long. He didn't see any reason to stand up to it. He just thought that was the way it had to be.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Until he learned something from Justice. A little further ahead in the story, Rick.
Yeah, well, then Justice kind of confides in Doc and reluctantly asks him about if he ever had a girlfriend, and they get into the subject of SJ. And Doc has been very observant, but really doesn't have, well, he does have some good advice, but it's hard, again, it's hard advice for a teenage boy to accept. He says, just wait, take your time. It'll all work out. Well,
It doesn't work out like that.
if I remember my teenage years 60 years ago, waiting
Yes.
was not on the top of my list, especially
No.
when it came to girls.
That's right. That's right.
I assume you don't have to wait for girls anymore, but has waiting ever been at the top of anybody's list? Like, nobody wants that.
Yeah.
Does anybody ever have any other insights from chapter 11? I
thought it was
go ahead.
I thought it was interesting that Justice had calls from Mello too. It
Yeah.
seems like maybe she might be trying to start things up again. Just like
That's
that, back
interesting
and
that you
forth,
picked
back and
up-
forth.
Hunter, that's
with that
interesting that
relationship.
you picked up on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Miller was trying to get a hold of him. Wonderful what? Right. I thought about that very
Mhm.
thing.
And I think part of the dynamic in chapter 11 is that Justice is trying to figure out who to model himself after.
Yeah, he's trying to identify. He's trying to find out who he
Yeah.
most identify with.
Which is, something that I think is normal when you have two functioning parents, but having the background that he has makes it even harder. And then none of the adults that he sees around him now have a lot of the same background experience. I mean, I think he's really struggling with who am I going to be,
Mhm.
and how am I going to be.
And how do I understand and express my anger? What do I
Right, yeah.
do? What do I do with this anger? Because obviously fighting everybody that insults me is not going to work. I tried.
Right.
Obviously drinking it away so I can ignore it doesn't work. So he's wrestling with, what do I do with anger? And I can remember in my adolescent years thinking anger was always destructive and always bad and just shoving it down and never allowing myself to get angry. I later had to learn angry is a pretty healthy response. At times it's a necessary
That's right.
response. So
Letting it out sometimes
he's beginning
helps.
to figure out, what do I do with this anger? I think
That's
he
right.
knows. I think he knows it's a righteous anger. I think he knows he is right, but that doesn't always tell you how to express it.
That's right.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's going to play forward into chapter 12 with Manny's dad.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That says a lot. Before we move on, Doc is a white man, right? Is that?
Pardon?
Doc is white. He's
half
white.
white.
No, he's biracial.
That's where I got lost. I began to wonder.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because I forgot where that was read. I forgot where, I didn't see that. Somehow I've overlooked that, and I don't know what Doc was. I thought I heard you say he was mixed race or biracial or something.
Yeah. Yeah. One place I discovered earlier today, you go to Google and put in "Hello Martin" and ask for character summaries. There's actually there's a website that kind of summarizes each chapter and then has a summary of all the characters
Oh,
Okay.
and what their background is. Because I think I told you last time, I stopped reading this about a month and a half ago because I was already up to chapter 20.
yeah.
And I'm reading 2 other books right now. So I had to go double back, and I found that site today to remind me exactly. I knew Manny was black, but I didn't know all the background and the background of his dad or Dr. Dre's background.
Okay, because I was trying to run.
So
I guess what I'm asking is, did I miss it in some of the previous chapters, what Doc's race was? Or
Yes.
anybody else where it was? You know what I'm saying? You guys read it?
I think it's somewhere back towards the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah, back toward the beginning, yeah. Because when
Okay. I'll go back and look for it. Yeah. All right.
Yeah,
I
because
was curious.
when he showed up to just a room, he was coming as a biracial, just like a Manning, basically.
I didn't read that into it. I wasn't
Yeah.
able to.
And therefore he was coming from, and just thought that he was coming to make punishment for him. But then he was coming over to help him get over this and to be there for him. So there was a contradiction of punishment, rather help. And then there was his man of thinking that I'm ready to talk with this white young lady, but she's turned me down. And then here come Mellows trying to get back in. So you had a whole lot of contradictions going on right there. And he's trying to figure out his way. And then almost at the end, I think he says something like, it just hurts when you try your best and people put you down.
And what about him asking Doc if he had a girlfriend? Doc, you got a girlfriend?
and that's his search. That's his search. He's searching for answers. What must I do about falling in love with a white woman?
But notice Doc tells him she'll come around. Doc knows that. Doc was like, she'll come around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That girl's got his head so twisted up, he's even willing to ask his teacher
Well.
if he's got a girlfriend, to even bring that up with your teacher. That's an awkward conversation. That's how much he's thinking about her and confused, right?
Yeah.
And I think most of us probably remember some of that stuff from high school days. I don't know. I was listening to sports talk radio this afternoon on the way back from the church, way home from the church. And I don't know what they were talking about, but they got one fella said, yeah, I remember a friend of mine from high school who thought he was God's gift to girls.
There are a few of those.
And he'd been going with the same girl for like a year. And he said, if I stop seeing her, every girl in the school will be after
Yeah,
me.
he
So
was
he
dreaming.
breaks up with the girl, and none of the rest of the girls want him. So then he asked, I wonder if I could get my old girlfriend back. So all that is such confusing times.
Yes.
You know, poor Justice really likes SJ and has his old girlfriend wanting to get back with him probably.
Yes.
So all these various pressures and stuff are pulling at him in all different directions. So ready for chapter 12?
Sure.
Sure.
Great summary, Rick. Thank you.
Okay. So Tuesday the next week, Justice goes to school and notices that Manny and Jared are both gone. They're both absent. And he sees the other white guys kind of grouped together and whispering. And when they look up at him, they all give him dirty looks. Well, later in the day, he sees Jared, whose face is all busted up badly. And he wonders if he's the one who did that. Saturday night party. Can't remember. He knows he hit him, but he didn't think he beat him that bad. Then when he gets back to his room, Manny comes over with a busted lip and a bandaged left hand. And Justice starts to apologize, but Manny cuts him off and says, save it. I know you didn't mean it. But Justice says, oh, yes, I did. I meant every word of it.
Yeah.
Then pausing, Justice admits that he meant everything, but that he had come to realize that he really didn't consider the bigger picture. That he didn't put himself in Manny's shoes, like you said before, who had grown up going to school with all these white kids for all his entire life.
Yeah.
That Justice just saw this stuff from his perspective. And that's not just a teenage thing. I think that goes along with all of us, you know, trying to see other people's perspectives.
Right. That's right.
Now, it doesn't mean that Manny or Justice agrees with Manny's worldview. It simply means that he recognizes that Manny's experiences of racism were different than his.
Right.
And even though Justice doesn't like the way he responds to it, he's learning to accept that people process all these emotions and the discrimination differently.
Mhm.
I know I had trouble in high school as I was coming to grips with, you know, I'd come from a city that was predominantly white and predominantly upper middle class white. And I started feeling it had very few blacks in the town.
Mhm.
But I was kind of lumped in with that group because I was poor white trash. And went to a predominantly, well, not 50% black inner city high school to live with, live with my grandparents so I could go to that high school. And started finally for the first time in my life realizing what African Americans had to put up with.
Hey, Rick,
So it's,
Rick, I'd like to interject
yes,
something there.
yeah,
Now, I find this very
Sure.
interesting. I find this very interesting. And this is my experience throughout my lifetime. You just said in that white upper middle class town or city that you were living in, you fell into a
Mhm.
category. And that category would have been
Oh, yeah.
considered poor, white, the word I always think that word is
Trash,
just as
yeah.
bad as the N word when it comes to talking about human beings. I've always looked at that word trash as how awful. And a white person came up with it. A black person did not come up with that term to call another human being a piece of trash. Okay, the N word was for us black folks, so that was it. But to call another human being a piece of trash, so So what I find, and I want to see if Leroy, and I believe there's a sister, DeCosta, I'm not familiar with
Yeah.
who this young lady is. I'll have to meet her, but I want to see if they could identify with what I'm about to say.
Okay,
Throughout my lifetime, it has mostly been someone who comes from the poor white background that tends to not want to understand what a Black person goes through and not want to be friendly or try to get into relationship with Black people. Some of the main ones that still try to keep this friction, this division between the races. Now, can anybody attest to that? Because that's what I see. I've run into it throughout my life.
Mm-hmm.
So, Rick, you would be an exception to the rule of someone coming from that background that I'm knowing personally that literally would say, now I kind of feel for those poor Black people for how they must feel. You're identifying, but I find that there's others who kind of don't want to identify.
Well, I grew up in a rural area. I grew up
Okay.
in a little rural town where everyone knew each other. The culture was very different.
Yeah.
Because when you grow up in the rural area, you sort of have to depend on each other, regardless of whether you're Black or white. So we did not have as much of the racial conflict between economic level, poverty level, things of that nature. We sort of understood each other. It's very different when you go into inner city places and you have the same socioeconomic person, Black and white, trying to relate. The culture is very different. So my growing up I didn't go through a lot of that because a lot of the same people lived, my next door neighbor or whatever. We all grew up in the same communities.
And where was that? What state was this?
This was South Carolina, but it's in
Oh,
a
it was?
little town called Allendale.
Okay,
And
so
to this day, those who were my age growing up, we all knew each other. Now, where the conflict comes in, when the transplant people come into the community and try to change the culture, and they bring a lot of their negativity to the community. Now, there you have an issue where an outsider is coming into a community that has been close-knit most of my life and try to drive wedges between people because that's how they grew up. That's the kind of environment that they were in. We find more outsiders coming in now into our communities, trying to create a division among races, which I didn't experience growing up as a little girl.
And see, and I did. So it's just the opposite. I grew up in a rural town, one-horse town, not even a traffic light. And everybody knows everybody, and it's still separated right now today.
Wow.
Yeah, it's bad. I grew up in it
is
all my life, from the 50s up until 70s when I graduated from high school.
Wow.
And everybody knew everybody, and we were still divided. And the poorer the person was, this is why I'm speaking from experience, the poorer the person was, the more they kind of didn't want to identify with Blacks. And the more upper class or richer the white student was in the school, I found that they befriended me more easily. That's what I'm trying to, that's what I'm saying.
All right.
You see, that was my experience. So I just wanted to see if you or Leroy had gone through that similar, and I see that yours was different from mine. Okay, thank you.
mine was a little different, but I grew up in the inner city of Columbia, South Carolina,
Okay.
and up in the middle class. And but I think the division came. We were all middle class, whites and Blacks, but we were also segregated. And we find that the upper class had a tendency to reach back to the middle class and tell the whites that they are better than the Blacks. And when it was time for jobs, although you may be educated and everything, we had to get the second place. And as a Black male, not only did I get the second place to other white males, but then they would reach back and grab hold to the white female. So now we would move from white male to white female, then they grabbed a hold to the Black female. And so what was left was for the African-American male. Now, I guess I didn't fall all the way into that category because of my educational level, and I love to be educated. And therefore, I was a little better off in finding jobs because of my educational level. But if not, we find that they would use that thing, you are better than the Blacks because you're white.
Which goes back to the book we read called Caste, where in a rigid caste society, people know their place. And a lot of what racism in the South is about was a caste position. And you just named that position.
Yes.
White male, white female, Black female, African-American male last. And so that was how society tried to structure and tell everyone where they belonged. And you got in trouble if you tried to change where you belonged, or you got ran into more resistance.
Yes.
And the poorer white you were, that's why, Jackie, the more threatened you were, because you're being compared to African Americans, and I don't want to be compared to them because my skin's white and I want the benefit, the privilege of being white. And there was a privilege and a benefit just to being white. Nothing about your education. There was a privilege just because of that alone. So, and that's where our racism has hurt us mightily in this country, and has made it very hard to overcome these kind of divisions, these caste divisions. And why I think reading a book like this, having these conversations, is a way of crossing bridges, is a way of saying that's not the way we're going to look at one another.
Yes. And we can sit here and all of us are, at least you'll say at least middle class here,
right?
And some of y'all got it going on. But in this society, there are people below the middle class, and we tend to forget about them. All of us, because we're doing pretty good.
That's right.
And then we not look down on them, but we need to reach back and help them, and that's not what we're doing.
Well, you're right. And that's what Dr. Cornel West wrote a book about the middle class Black.
Mm-hmm.
And when I read that book years ago, and I remember him pointing out the fact that what had happened to the Black race and us being unified in this world where the white system has divided us, but at the same time, he said it's the middle class Blacks that tend to forget about those Blacks who are still struggling, who may not be as educated, may not have gotten to that point yet. That was one of the biggest problems that we have in the world today. But he said, because Dr. Martin Luther King, one thing he and Malcolm X and different ones didn't get caught up in is living rich. In other words, like, I've made it, so I'm going to wear the designer suits and the alligator shoes and the expensive watches and stuff. They live meagerly so as not to get so high-minded that they forget the rest of the race, the rest of the ones in the struggle. And I can kind of relate to what they were saying.
Yeah.
Middle
Pastor
class.
Jackie,
In fact, I go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I just finished reading a book from one of John Lewis's books a few weeks ago. And he literally talked about sometimes Martin Luther King would win an award or something that would come with a lot of money. And he said he could have stopped the work. He could have taken that money and his family would have been fine. They could have moved up north and they would have been safer. And he said he never did that. He said every time he won an award that came with some sum of money, he turned around and put that money right back into the work of trying to advance civil rights for other people.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's the same thing that Cornel West pointed out in his book too, the difference between the activists, the Black activists of the earlier days. They never got caught up in, I've made it. I'm doing better and I'm just going to go ahead and live a cushiony, better life as a Black person in America after all I've been through, and forget about the rest.
Which in our story is what the character Manny is trying to do.
This is what his father.
Well off, we're doing fine. I'm gonna forget about anybody that's below me. I'm not gonna
Yep.
own my black identity. I'm not gonna embrace it. I'm just gonna kind of hang out with other rich white boys and kind of run with the crowd and sort of ignore some of the slurs and the put down. So, and that's what
Manny's father did it to him, though. This
Yep.
is what we see here in chapter 12.
Right.
Manny's father is at fault, and he comes to,
Yeah.
to share that with him. Okay.
And I think Dr. King,
And
Dr.
What
King
they wrote?
also had the movement for all people.
yes, I
And
was
it's
going to
not-
mention that.
Yeah. Did not.
Yeah,
want to be
he was
found
very
inside.
close with Cesar Chavez and the Hispanic field workers.
Yeah.
In fact, back in the 90s, when I was asked to do the sermon at the Martin Luther King Memorial Service in Chester, South Carolina, I led the congregation in singing "We Shall Overcome" in Spanish in honor of Dr. King's emphasis that, we are making strides. We need to reach down to our Latina and Latino brothers and sisters and help them up. Because there are a lot of migrant workers in South Carolina.
Yeah.
To remind them that was, Dr. King never forgot people, didn't want anyone left behind. And as I've progressed through all this in the last couple of years, I've realized, number one, I found out that the high school I went to, which is where my parents both and all my aunts and uncles went to, was originally, it was in the slums of Peoria, Illinois, but that was a German slum originally, back in the early 1900s. It was for German factory workers. It was a German slum. And when African Americans started coming up from the South and settling and getting jobs, they started settling in there, and there was a lot of animosity toward them by the Germans who were there because they were being played off for the same low-scale wages.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I saw the same thing in the Mexican and white communities in Galesburg, Illinois, after I graduated from college and was dating a Mexican girl. You saw the same thing. The white and the Latino groups in Galesburg, Illinois, big minorities, were being played off by the white establishment against one another.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think I hear you, Dean.
Neil.
Neil.
Well, I mean, I grew up my younger years outside of Pittsburgh in West Virginia and Pittsburgh itself.
Wow.
And the area up there, you talk about specifically around Pittsburgh, when the mills were working. If you go to Pittsburgh, even today, you see sections of the town that are completely split ethnically.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
There's the Italian section, there's the Irish section, there's the African American section, there's the Jewish section, and you drive between them and you get a flavor of each. And even within them, you see strata, like 3 streets over, 4 streets over. You notice a difference even within the community. Now, all these people would go down to the bar and buy each other a beer. Picture Archie Bunker using every racial epithet while buying beer.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they worked together in the mill. They had each other's back because it was life and death.
That's right.
None of them had money. And the same with the coal mines in West Virginia. I mean, people went to West Virginia because the work was there. Was it a good job? Did half the people die with black lung? Yeah. But I mean, all you could do is work the work that was there. And like Rick was saying, it was funny to watch how people played off of each other.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I can get this whole neighborhood over here for half the price of you.
Yep.
I'm serious. There were regularly mills that acted that way. You know, I can get this whole group of people over here. So that's why it's interesting listening to this. I do pay.
Without you, we wouldn't be out here, so we're glad you're there.
Yep, thank you, Neil.
Yeah,
But I mean, I've seen that even in places you don't think to see that.
but you just now said that that is happening today. Is it
Oh,
still deeply ingrained in our society?
Oh, heck
I'm
yeah.
sure it is.
Have you all
Yes.
seen the news?
Yeah. I guess it was a rhetorical.
But I mean, even right now, you watch the evening news and you see how groups of people listen to their groups of people. However you want to interpret that.
Mm-hmm.
You believe what your group of people says.
Right.
And the more that we get fractured like that and don't cross lines and don't have the conversations we need to have and don't, one of the things, Herman, I loved about your time with here was you really seemed to bring, you knew there had to be progress and bring as many people along as you could. Now, you knew there were going to be a couple people, but you tried to bring as many people along as you could. And that's something I always respected about you. And that's where I think we need more of that mentality. You know, how do we bring as many people along and make progress?
That's right.
Neil, as you asked that question, if you wouldn't have been on the call maybe, or you may have been in the room listening in on one of these book studies. I got so frustrated one night because I said, I'm sick and tired of playing this game now, having these little discussions with white people that already get it, that already see it, they already feel it.
I do remember you. I do remember that night.
To hear it will not come and partake of this conversation. I'm tired of it.
Yeah.
It gets on my nerves sometimes.
So I get that. So how do you get those other people?
You can't get, unless I always say it's a white man, it's white men. And Herman Yost, Bishop Yost, is one of those men who have gone above and beyond to try to draw in some of those people that he knows does not feel, that he knows they may not feel quite like him. But he can only do it one person at a time.
Yeah.
You know, one person at a time. And if he does good when he does that, but we need more, we need it like a replica, a duplicate of you. And I'm not trying to swear your head or try to placate you, Pastor Yost, but real. I mean, LaVon Griffin will tell you right now that he was just as bigoted and militant as he can be toward whites until he met these Lutherans here in South Carolina, and Yost is at the beginning of that list of white men and white people that he met that made him say, wait a minute, maybe I've been a little too hard.
What Neil said is what I think we're learning. It's about relationships when we don't stay in our place, when we
That's
cross
right.
a line, when we cross a bridge, when we have these kind of conversations.
That's right.
We are changed by the community. We're changed by friendships. We're changed by conversations. And the reason I say we keep doing this is because it's life-giving. And if we don't do this, we can't give life to other people if we don't feed the life ourselves and realize the Christ that is in all of us and bring out the Christ that is in one another and appreciate the Christ in one another and get out of our little comfort zones. And
That's right.
It's not easy, but if you don't get out of your comfort zone, you're going to suffocate.
That's exactly right. That's
And you
exactly
have those public opportunities.
Yes.
Because one of the things I remember so well was the early Selma events. I think we were in Greenville, and what you were telling me about people didn't believe about being pulled over.
Yeah.
You know, and I was like, I believed it because I saw it with the Liberian kids we had. We had emergency fostered a family that came over from Liberia as refugees. And I saw it, so it's like, that, never thought that I couldn't believe that, because I seen it.
Yeah.
The Selma movies were powerful because you got to see a story being acted out that was a part of our history, and then you got to react to that story. And you had to say, what's going on? What do I see? What do I think? What do I feel? What was Dr. King thinking and feeling? Where was justice? Where was the law? And then it allowed people to stand up and say, you mean really? African, you taught your son to put his hands on the, really, that happened? Because the white guy who lived in a very privileged world found it hard to believe. Another story about a white Jewish man at the synagogue when we did the Selma movie, started feeling his guilt and shame and started talking about how he had picked on Black young boys in his school because he was white. He was Jewish, but he was white. And Levon got out of his seat, came up and hugged the guy. And that was a moment where you could just you could see the light turn on in him. I'm being hugged. And I just told you, I haven't been very kind to African-American boys when I was growing up. But he was saying it as a confession, as a repentance, and absolution came from Levon. You're a brother. You're a child of God. Be healed. Be whole. The gospel was being acted out. So these conversations have to happen because it's so easy to stay in our comfort zone.
That's right.
And stay with people who look like us and talk like us.
That's right.
Sociologically, financially, and otherwise, educationally. Jesus just kind of calls us to get out of our little silos.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes we think we're not making progress, but let's take, for instance, just recently, I met with Dr. DaCosta, and we ended up with over 25 or 30 people at the Reformation Church.
Yeah.
But when we start thinking about the 30-something times we went around with Selma, and then, of course, we did a book study in Aiken, and we had over 100 people to come out to view with us the Selma movie also. So we're making progress. It seems as if, sometimes we have only a few people. Look at what we're doing. With the Rick Church, we had 15, 20 people there.
Right.
So all we have to do is to keep going and don't.
And how do we regain that momentum post-COVID? You see what I mean? That was something that we had us rolling.
Yeah.
And then we had COVID.
And that's why I said the film, is that Origin? That's the name
Origins,
of it?
Yeah,
Origins. All right.
Origin.
That is one that we need to work on to really get that going. And
We also
see what's
took
going.
35 people down to the African
That's
Museum
it,
in
yeah.
Charleston.
Yes.
Powerful. We took another
Yep.
20 to see the civil rights story in Columbia. So actually taking these field trips, it's eye-opening and enlightening.
Alabama.
We did
DC.
that Selma.
Selma,
trip
that's
to
Selma, okay.
Selma, yeah.
DC.
Yeah, DC. We did.
You see.
We did.
All right.
That was a bus trip.
So when you travel with folks, you're getting out of your comfort zone and you're hearing
That's right.
and you're talking to one another and you're sharing and those experiences are life-giving and life-changing. And books are just a tiny piece of the puzzle, but I think they are an important piece because they give us a framework, even a narrative like this. The story is it's a fictional story, but it's very true.
Yeah.
You can say it's fictional, but it's very true, and it speaks words of truth that have been too painfully true for too long.
That's right. That's
Sure.
right. But the church today, and I always tell folks, the church is the most segregated place on Sunday morning. And until we wake up and realize that if you love Jesus Christ, you have to learn to love your brother. Because if we've never seen Christ and we say we love him, how can we say that we love our brother whom we have never, who we see every day?
Amen.
And the church has got to be bold enough. And that's where a lot of the issues lie. We're so comfortable in our own little place. We just don't want to see the church integrated, or we don't want to see a mixture of cultures in the church. But if we're believing in the same Christ, what difference does it make?
See, I think one thing churches could do is partner with one another.
Absolutely.
and say, you be you and we'll be us, but every fourth Sunday, every sixth Sunday, we're gonna get together and have a hymn sing, or we're gonna go do something in the community. But we're gonna be partners in living out our faith. And
Absolutely.
it's okay that we have some different denominations, different
That's right.
denominational structures. We're not
Right.
gonna have those arguments again. We have spent way too much time arguing about things that are really, in the long, big picture of things, not that important.
That's right.
you
That's
know?
right.
And
That's right.
So, but to be able to say, we're gonna be partners in this community, and we're gonna try to make a difference in this community where we
And
live.
that's right. You got to do it in your own
And
hometown,
we
your
take
own
turns- we
circle.
take turns having some potluck dinners with each other, seeing a movie at each other, having these kind of conversations. That I think can help bridge some of these gaps that we're still living with.
I agree.
Well,
And I do think it's happening.
yeah,
Just
it
slow.
breaks my heart that there's a Lutheran church in Johnston, South Carolina, had a white female pastor that let me know that her members told her, we don't want them in our church with us. We got to go and share. We got to go to the same restaurants, the movies, and different places. We don't want them in our church with us. And so she thought she had made leeway with her people whenever some of the women heard me speak at a ELCA conference. And when they heard me, they asked her, could I come and speak to their church, be the guest speaker at their church? And I went. And she was shocked that they wanted me to come, because they were some of the ones that said that they didn't want Black people in their church worshiping with them. Long story short, I go there. I'm received warmly by some of the people, maybe not quite all. But then the very next time when she tried to bring Pastor Jorge there, a Latino, they ran her away from the church. Literally. Says,
Wow.
oh no, you've gone too far. We're not going to continue this.
Well,
And she had to leave that call.
if
Pastor
I,
Yosef, you familiar with this?
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Okay, and it's true.
if I can, a good note, if I may, because I know we're getting close to time.
And I've got to get off. I got a hard stop at 7:30 because my
All right.
intercessory prayer group will meet at 7:30, and I'm controlling the Zoom.
Oh,
Understood.
and nice
As long as you pray for us, we can handle that.
So we want to say thank you,
Will
Dr.
do.
DeCosta, for
Will
coming.
do, and I will see you
Whatever
all. Is it
Thank
next
you.
week? Are we meeting next
No.
week?
No,
Uh,
no,
Next
not
week.
Holy Week.
Every other Tuesday.
I think the next one is April.
It's more or less every other Tuesday, but
April
check the
6th.
emails. We're not doing the next 2 weeks because next week is Holy Week and the week after that
Yes.
is the week after Easter.
3
Which,
weeks.
as you might be aware, is the week when clergy take naps.
Yes.
Okay.
hey.
Well,
No,
let me send me an email when the next.
The ninth.
There'll be an email.
It's April 9th.
April the
Take
9th.
care.
April the 9th. And then
The
the
9th and 23rd, yes.
If I can share though, real quick, one of the amazing stories. As many of you know, the area around Pomeria and Newberry has been, shall we say, a little more ready to be segregated.
Yes.
Yeah.
And yet just this past year, there were multiple Lutheran churches and a Methodist church that came together to help rebuild St. James AME. And that was, I mean, they just came together and did it. And that being a sign of something that I think like you said, we got to do those things. And they just did it. There was it needed done, they did it. And it came from the congregation. It came from Art Hallman's congregation, Bethlehem.
Yep.
And then it spread and came together and different things. I mean, I saw pictures of that foundation. Well, I think they called it a foundation in that building, and it was just amazing.
And prior to that, there had been a Selma event in that community at Pomeria Lutheran Church.
Mhm,
And there were
mhm.
folks from that Pomeria Lutheran Church that became a part of this. So it really is, that's how the sowing seeds, you think nothing much is happening, and then God plants the seed in some different ground or some hard ground, and the seed sprouts.
Absolutely. Yep. Okay, any other comments before Rick give our final remarks? Anybody else?
Well, I think we will probably need to finish chapter 12 chapter 12 and the letter to Martin at the beginning of next time we get together. We'll try and make it quick. That's my last day in the United States before I head off to a river cruise in Europe with my wife for 10 days.
You're coming back, right?
Oh.
I haven't decided yet.
As
No.
long as you're coming back.
How about, Rick, if we just start with the letter to Martin? Because we've narrated the story
Okay.
and the story.
Okay.
Let's start with the letter to Martin, and that wouldn't take long.
That wouldn't take long.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
Exactly.
Next
Jackie, are you okay
session
with
has a
that?
lot to cover, so.
Yeah, we'll just do it. Yeah, that's good. Okay.
I want to point out that the Inclusiveness Network meets at 4 o'clock on Thursday for those who are involved or would like to be involved in that.
You think
Yep.
so?
Okay.
That's what my email says.
Jackie, are you okay with reading?
That's
I know.
another thing. That's another thing. Pastor Yost, that network has dwindled down to 4 or 5 people that will attend the meetings. Don't get me started. God knows. Emily, am I true? Am I right? How many people do
You
we
are
have
not
to-
wrong. There's more than that on the email list. I think we're up to about 10 on the email list now, but we don't
And
always
then
get.
how many attend the meetings?
Right.
4?
We got about half.
3 or 4?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
So
just saying.
I just want to
always
say,
room for more.
I've seen that committee wane and wax and grow and shrink. You know, and so I'm just saying the work of the kingdom is not always about numbers.
Yeah. Oh
Thank
boy, do I know that. I would
Thank
have
God.
given up a long
I
time
know
ago.
that. I know that. My pastor tells me that just about every Sunday.
Yeah, I do that. I do that. Yes, I do. And that's why I'm devoted. I'm still going to be a part. I want to be in that number, no matter how small it is.
When the saints go marching in, I do too.
I want to be in that number.
I'll set my excuse in. I'll be out of town, so I would love to be there, but I'll be out of town. So,
Okay, make
Got
that
me
all
in.
right. Rick, you
Okay.
excuse.
okay, Rick. Thanks, Neil, for everything that you do.
Let us pray.
Right.
Dear Lord, we thank you for bringing us together this evening. We ask you to continue to bless us as we strive to find our way to true racial reconciliation. Open our eyes to all that goes on around us, that we may contribute to racial justice in all the world. It's in your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right. So,
Dr.
All righty.
yeah.
Good night, everybody.
I should be there I should be there
Change that.
Thursday, Emily.
great.
So that,
Bye, everybody.
Okay, I plan to be in right now. That's what
Okay, great.
probably on Zoom because I have another meeting prior
Yeah.
to that. So, yeah.
Okay,
on
well,
Zoom.
look, the Zoom works. We will take it.
Okay. All right. Good night, everybody.
All right. Bye.